This is Horus. In the universe of video game mascots, Horus's star dimmed long ago. Hero of 8-bit hits such as Hungry Horus and Horus Goes Skiing, he was a shapeless blob with holes for eyes and a flick of hair generally mistaken for a single stunted arm. No official sequels have appeared for decades, and few modern players even know his name. However, is that really the case? Hello everybody and welcome back to my video gaming channel Retro Gamer Diaries. Today we're talking about the Horus video game series, which started a trilogy of games including Hungry Horus, Horus Goes Skiing and Horus and the Spiders in the early 80s, but then went on to inspire further unofficial freeware Horus games appearing since on modern platforms. So let's look into the history of these games. By Christmas 1982, the ZX Spectrum had been on the market for 8 months and was fast becoming popular due to its low price and accessibility. The speed at which the computing market was advancing took most people by surprise, and a shortage of software was the result. Well, decent games that is. Fortunately, we at least had Horus, the first successful attempt to introduce some sort of recurring games franchise to the Sinclair home computer. If you read anything about the ZX Spectrum today, it seems impossible to avoid the influence of Horus. Originating from the early months of the Spectrum's life, Horus was the brainchild of Beam Software founder Alfred Milgrom and programmer William Tang. Alfred Milgrom, with business partner and marketing expert Naomi Besson, launched Beam Software in 1980. From the company's beginnings as UK publishing firm Melbourne House, which they had established in London in 1977, both Milgrom and Besson moved to Australia and opened up their software programming arm with Beam. Beam was initially formed to produce books and software to be published by Melbourne House. The company produced a series of groundbreaking games in the 1980s, most notably the seminal games of The Hobbit, which allowed characters to direct other characters, and The Way of the Exploding Fist, one of the first one-on-one fighting games developed for the home computer. Sadly, Beam was sold to Chrome Studios in 2006, which in turn ceased operations in 2010. I am always interested in the history of these talented people and what actually happened to them. The name Beam was apparently a contraction of the names of the founders, Naomi Besson and Alfred Milgrom. Naomi Besson is quite well known. She's an Australian billionaire businesswoman. She was also at one time married to Alfred Milgrom, hence why she is more commonly known as Naomi Milgrom. Her private company ARJ Group Holdings owns women's clothing retailers Sportsgirl, Suzanne and Suzanne Gray. In 2018, according to the UK Financial Times, Milgrom was the 8th richest woman in Australia, with an estimated net worth of over $5 million Australian dollars. And as of May 2023, the Australian Financial Review assessed her net worth as 1.15 billion Australian dollars in the 2023 Rich List. I think it's fair to say that she's done pretty okay for herself. Now, William Tang, Horus's creator, is a bit of a mystery. All that is really known about Tang is that he was Beam Software's first employee, joining the company in 1981. As well as the Horus titles, Tang also worked on the games The Way of the Exploding Fist, Mugsy's Revenge and Asterix and the Magic Cauldron. I also know that he wrote a book about programming for the Spectrum called The Language for the Absolute Beginner. A new Horus game, Horus to the Rescue, was announced in 1985, but Tang apparently suffered a collapsed lung and the game was never released. William Tang pretty much disappears after that. I couldn't find any more information about him. Anyway, I hope he's okay because the Horus series gave me a lot of pleasure when I was a kid, and I'm sure he didn't die from that collapsed lung. What I find very interesting about Alfred is that he was the original guy who gave the concept of Horus. It wasn't actually designed by William, it was designed by Alfred. From a recent interview in the Retro Gamer magazine, Alfred says, "The reality of Horus's look is that I was the graphic artist for the character, and I'm not a graphic artist. His size was dictated by the limitations of the Spectrum, and there was naught I could do in such a small space. I could either make Horus just a head or give him more of a body, and my limited skill dictated a head with a rat's tail on legs." Well, there you go, but from this rough design etched into graph paper, he was to go on to be the star of a hugely successful trilogy of arcade-inspired games that were to be published by Spectrum creators Sinclair Research themselves and eventually bundled in with the computer. A vaguely person-shaped blob with eyes and holes, legs and a ponytail, Horus' bizarre appearance hasn't stopped him from winning an army of fans who are in no doubt that he was the unofficial mascot of this system. Never mind about that blue hedgehog and that fat plumber. Horus made his first appearance in 1982, the Spectrum's very first year on the market. Hungry Horus was Beam Software's first game, and its founder Alfred Milgram, like many, looked to the arcades when it came to devising ideas. The result was inspired by Pac-Man, but with a twist. The main character travels between diverse levels, exploring alternative locations within his local park. One element that remains the same is the eating, only instead of dots, it's flowers, for which the strange beast has a yearning. Naturally, the park wardens are not exactly thrilled by Horus's voracious appetite and they're out to stop him. Fortunately, our hero can ring the alarm bell, which confuses the parkies long enough so that he can bounce them from the maze and wander around unmolested for a short time, chomping on petal to his heart's content, as if he has a heart. Let's have a look at the ZX Spectrum game. The game was not only released on the ZX Spectrum, but it was also released in the Commodore 64 and the Dragon 32 and 64. The ZX Spectrum original was marketed and distributed by Sinclair themselves, while the Commodore 64 and Dragon 32 versions were marketed and distributed by Melbourne House. There were also other ports released on the Timex Sinclair 2068 and the TRS-80. Melbourne House had also advertised a VIC-20 version of Hungry Horace in Personal Computer Weekly back in 1983. However, this game was never released. And later, a Microsoft Windows and Android version was released on Steam by Pixel Games UK on September the 17th, 2020. So let's have a look at those versions, starting with the Commodore 64. Okay, that was Hungry Horace. We can see that at the time Horace was pretty well received. In CMVG's 1983 Book of Reviews, Hungry Horace was rated as their joint favourite maze game, alongside the long-forgotten Spectrum Spectres. Though there was no hint of them considering Horace to be a mascot of the Spectrum itself, they at least thought of him as a cute character. They state Horace is one of the stars of computer games. Like Miner Willy, Cuthbert and Pac-Man, his latest games are looked forward to in the same way as the next installment of the Star Wars or Rocky sagas. Well, that's quite impressive. While Practical Computing considered Horace as downright silly in their March 1983 review, they noted that the game itself was fun to play even if they disliked the controls. Perhaps the most glowing of the early reviews, however, could be found in a reader review of ZX Computing and a feature on Spectrum Pac-Man clones found in Sinclair User. In ZX Computing, Hungry Horace was praised for its cutting-edge graphics and pegged as a future classic. While in Sinclair User, Horace is described as almost a legend. Okay, there may not be any hints of him being considered a mascot, but Horace was clearly a character that captures the imagination. Indeed, according to Sinclair User, he'd be topping the software charts for months. Personal Computer World said the graphics are excellent, and there are some interesting if rather limited sound effects. And Dragon User said, if you like maze chasing with a difference, then I can heartily recommend Horus. Your Computer said, all things considered, it's a marvellous little game, especially for the graphics, and would be especially good for young children. And finally, Commodore Computing International said, Hungry Horus is undoubtedly a good and occasionally funny game. There you go. Overall, very positive reviews. Okay, so now we're on to the sequel. Ask those who were around in 1983 what they remember about the Spectrum, and there's a good chance Horus's 1982 sequel will probably feature in their reply. Though it appeared within months of the original and was still targeted at owners of the 16K Spectrum, Horus Goes Skiing was a much more ambitious game. Tang produced Horus Goes Skiing, in which Horus must cross a dangerous road teeming with traffic, a la Frogger, to rent out a pair of skis and then get back over the road and successfully navigate a ski course. Like Hungry Horus, the title was available on the ZX Spectrum, Commodore 64 and Dragon 32. As before, Sinclair distributed the Spectrum version, while Melbourne House distributed their Commodore 64 and Dragon 32 versions. There were also ports released for the Timex Sinclair 2060 and the TRS-80. Horus Goes Skiing was also released on Steam by, again, Pixel Games UK in October 2020. So let's look at these games by starting by looking at the ZX Spectrum version. The game is basically split into two gameplay sections. As I just mentioned, the first part is unashamedly based on the arcade game Frogger. With Horus standing at the top of the screen with a pocket full of dollars, his task is to cross a busy motorway in order to purchase some skis from the shop at the bottom of the screen. If he succeeds, he then has to carry his skis back across the road in order to make it to the slopes. Predictably, the second screen finds Horus and his skis ready to tackle a basic downhill course. Incredibly arcadey in nature, the player doesn't have to worry about complex considerations like speed control and balance. Instead, they simply have to slalom left and right, fit in between flag gates and avoiding impacts with the scenery. If the player makes it to the bottom without breaking their skills, they end up spawning at the ski shop, ready to make their way across the road to do it all over again. Despite being released so close to Hungry Horus, Horus Goes Skiing probably seemed like a breath of fresh air. Not only was Frogger not as heavily rifed as Space Invaders and Pac-Man, but the AB gameplay model seems like it should have felt sufficiently novel. Okay, now we're on to the Commodore 64 version of Horus Goes Skiing. Okay, now we're on the horoscope scheme for the Dragon 32. With the release of Horus Goes Skiing, this is where we start to see Horus being first thought about being some sort of Specky mascot. Writing in a review of Specky software published in June 1983, ZX Computing wrote, "It looks rather like Uncle Clive is taking Horus as something sort of a semi-mascot, as this is the second in a series of programs in which he has starred." It is notable, however, that these are just idle comments, based on the fact that Sinclair had published 2 Horus games in a few months. It doesn't seem to be based on any sort of suggestion from Sinclair that Horus was officially considered a mascot. And for the game itself, well, it was generally well received. ZX Computing noted that though Skiing and Frogger had both been done before separately, it was novel having both together in one program, and that putting the 2 games in conjunction produces one of the most addictive packages I have yet encountered. They also praised the high quality of the graphics and concluded that Horus Goes Skiing definitely helped set the new higher standard for Sinclair distributed software. Computer and Video Gaming Magazine, meanwhile, were impressed with the value on offer. Splendid graphics and an addictive game and a lovable character in the shape of Horus, all for £5. Finally, Personal Computer News noted that though neither Hungry Horus nor Horus Goes Skiing were original, both were a lot of fun to play, and that Horus himself as a creation was the electronic equivalent of the Mr. Men books. So Horus may not have been considered an official Spectrum mascot, but it is clear that his personality was central to the appeal of Horus games, well, in 1982 to 1983 at least anyway. In 2017, the game placed on Eurogamer's 10 games that defined the ZX Spectrum list. Wow, spot on. Horus's awkward third and final of the trilogy, the original Spectrum game, came in the form of 1983's Horus and the Spiders. Following on from Horus Goes Skiing, Spiders was a game that tried to compile 3 types of arcade experiences into one package. If Skiing had started a trend of rifling off increasingly obscure arcade titles, Spiders continued it. Although the first 2 platforming screens are vaguely reminiscent of Pitfall, the main attraction is the third and final screen. Here, Horus has to stomp poisonous spiders through holes he's made in their own webs. Gameplay that is clearly a homage to 1980 arcade title Space Panic. Looking back today, it's certainly an interesting one. Considering that Tang was still targeting the 16K Specky, packing in 3 different variations of gameplay was an impressive feat. However, the gameplay arguably suffered as a result. Though the Space Panic screen holds up well, the first is a poor man's Pitfall, while the second web bridge screen feels like a filler. A more extensive Space Panic clone that expanded on the original concept in a similar way to Hungry Horus would, arguably, have been a better bet. Horus and the Spiders was also made available for the Timex Sinclair 2068. And there was also a Windows game which was made available in 2005 by Pug Fugly Games. Let's have a look at that. Once again, we see that Horus was well received by the reviewers at ZX Computing, who noted that the idea was fun and novel and that the gameplay was addictive. Horus didn't have a clean sweep this time, mind you. The spiders in the final stage were noted as being a little too clever when it came to hole avoidance, while ZX Computing felt the other levels could do with extending. Other outlets had no such reservations, mind you. Home Computing Weekly praised the excellent graphics and careful use of colour, while giving the game 100% for playability. Mind you, that magazine wasn't particularly shy at handing out 100% marks, I have to say. If Spiders wasn't quite as well received as Skein, it definitely wasn't that far off. We should also note that even with 3 titles in the can, none of the language used in the media coverage suggests that Horus was considered a mascot of the system. Come on, flippin' egg. Horus was supposed to have at least one more adventure. Due to be released in 1984, Horus to the Rescue was to be a take on the Princess Saving genre. Unfortunately, it never made it to production. Tang fell seriously ill while creating the game, and the project was never finished. A fact that arguably tells us a great deal about how quickly the software market was moving. Again, I hope that Mr. Tang's okay. So, that was the original trilogy. Horus was a multi-platform hero. Though developed for the Spectrum, Hungry Horus and Horus Goes Skiing were both ported to the Commodore 64 and Dragon 32. Though Horus and the Spiders was exclusive to the Sinclair machine, this had nothing to do with some sort of modern style exclusivity deal. There simply wasn't the same level of demand for Horus on the Dragon and Commodore machines that there was on the Spectrum. And when Spiders also failed to meet sales expectations, it didn't make commercial sense to devote even more resources to another Horus project. In an interview in Retro Gamer, Andrew Milgrom confirmed that despite Tang being too ill to work, it could have been possible for someone else to finish the job if it had been thought worthwhile. However, in an amusing twist, Horus did manage to come to the rescue in the real world. Both Horus Goes Skiing and Horus and the Spiders appeared on charity compilations, a Band-Aid inspired Soft Aid compilation and a collection for War on Want, respectively. Unfortunately, these would mark Horus's last formal appearance on the Speccy, save for post-millennium homebrew and a weird cameo on an obstacle in a licensed Inspector Gadget title from 1987. As the Spectrum wouldn't relinquish the firm grip it had on the software charts well into 1982, we can say that, rather awkwardly, of its glorious 10-year reign, 8 of them were effectively Horus-free. Okay, now let's continue our little adventure by having a look at the homebrew games of Horus. I was actually very surprised just how popular the Horus games have actually been in the homebrew scene. Very impressed. Horus made a comeback in 1995 with a platform-based game Horus in the Mystic Woods for the Scion 3 series of Palm-top computers. The 4th entry in the Horus series is a platform game split into one-screen levels in the style of Manic Miner and was coded by Michael Ware of Proteus Developments. And then in 2010, a conversion of the game to the ZX Spectrum was released by indie coder Bob Smith. Let's have a peek. Wow, that Horus in the Mystic Woods is actually good. Okay, our next homebrew game is Flippin' Horus for the ZX Spectrum 48K. This was published by Mulder in 2010. Let's see what this looks like. These homebrew games are really good. Homeless Horus was also created by Mulder in 2010, but unfortunately I don't have a video clip. Perhaps the next time, eh? Now for the 2011 Horus Goes to the Tower. So what's the story of this game? Well, Horus was once a well-known computer game star, but money troubles have driven him to other computer systems. This transfer went largely unnoticed and did not make him wealthy, and he was slammed in the gutter press on top of that as well. In shame, he turned himself in and the police put him in the Tower of London, where he would be beheaded. Gee, that's a bit harsh. There he meets Saberman, who offers him a way out. As a sellout, he would go to a gamer hell after his death, but he can avoid it by burning the master copies of his Commodore 64 games and other sellout titles. Saberman opens the door for him if he promises to destroy the Commodore 64 master copies of Saberwolf and Underworld as well. Good, I like it. So the 2D game has a single level composed of several single screen rooms connected both horizontally and vertically using the flip screen mechanic to offer an amount of exploration. Horus needs to collect 10 master tapes and then the game is won right away. He has no means to attack and needs to complete platforming sections while dodging enemies and hazards such as spikes. Some of the sections are locked and first require an unlocker, basically a key to be found. He starts with 40 health and every encounter with an enemy or hazard drains some. By returning to previously visited screens, a large red heart can sometimes be picked up, restoring some health. There are also some small environment-based puzzle elements involving pushing blocks, checkered and green, to create platforms leading to areas you can otherwise not reach. And when stuck pushing platforms, the R key can be pressed to reset the room. Overall, a good game. Now, my rendition of Horus to the Rescue is a 2013 homebrew game developed by Steve A.G. Broad. Horus to the Rescue is a lost game in Melbourne House's cult Horus franchise. As we already discussed, the game was not released because Tang had a collapsed lung. Again, I hope he's okay. I mean, the game was announced and talked about in several magazines of the time, but it just never appeared, and no source code or designs have ever been found. So, World of Spectrum member Steve Broad, also known as Wiper 2001, set about making his own version of this mythical game late last year. He spent 2 months writing his own rendition of Horus to the Rescue. He decided to fill the unfinished gap and based his version on the same formula as the original games, keeping the gameplay and everything else simple while trying to make it addictive for the perfect recipe. Apparently Steve ran out of memory near the end of the development, so he was only able to fit 15 levels in the game. Still, it's pretty good. Okay, this is Cousin Horus, which was released in 2014. It was a pretty good intro, that, wasn't it? Anyway, the two Horuses are currently helping local authorities in their respective countries into investigating an underground network formed by their ancient enemies, the Guardians, an evil secret society bent on world domination, and the Spiders together with their new allies, the Flying Demons. So let's have a look at the game. Okay, this is Horus Minor by Steve Broad, released in 2014. Steve Broad again also done a sequel to Horus Minor, which was also released in 2014. Busy guy, this guy. My God, another Steve Broad game to follow up on his first Horus to the rescue. Gee, he's been a busy guy, this Steve fella, hasn't he? Good job though. Spot on, Steve. Now here's a Merry Christmas from Horus, released in 2016. In this game, you guide Horus to collect all of the Christmas presents. Use a keyboard or Kempston joystick to move Horus left, right and jump. Avoid being hit by the usual enemies, snowballs and snowflakes. If possible, try jump onto the nasty to knock them down. This game has 49 levels of progressive gameplay. That's pretty impressive, 49 levels. You simply collect the presents as they fall while avoiding the enemies. Collect 20 presents per level before the time is up. And collect the bell to release the bonuses. Watch out for the elves though. Okay, this is Horus and the Robots, which was released in 2017. Now Horus takes on the evil robots and of course the evil invincible boss, Evil Otto. I do like the speech effects in this game actually, very good.
Horus. Kill it. The intruder must not escape. Destroy Horus. Intruder alert! Intruder alert! Get Horus! Shoot Horus! The intruder must not escape.
Oh Christ, we're nearly there. Here's Horus and the Vikings, which was released in 2021. Finally, here we have the 2024 Horus Goes Night Skiing. This is the last game. Phew. Now looking at this game, I certainly don't think this game is fully finished. In fact, I think it's just a demo. Well, there you go. That was my video of the Horus series. For me, he is the unofficial mascot of the ZX Spectrum. Well, perhaps equal to that Willy fella. I have to say, I really enjoyed the hours of addictive fun that the original Horus games brought to the 80s, particularly in the early life of the ZX Spectrum. But I have to say, I was also equally very impressed with all those homebrew games. Just pure talent and all worthy of being included in the Horus legacy. Well done guys, spot on. Anyway, it's time for me to go. I hope you liked my video, and if you did, then please press the like button, leave a comment, and better still, please subscribe to my channel. Now remember guys, please don't take the video too seriously, it's just for fun, but if you must, leave a geeky comment, then fine. Take care guys, see you all soon, bye bye. Oh, and Mr. Tang, please let me know that you're alive, okay?